big news from today that I honestly was surprised to not see more people talking about. Um, and that is this big trial that just came to a close. It was 5 weeks in total, but the investigation began in 2024, around the same time that the charges against Diddy were filed, and that was happening. And funny enough, Mark Agnifilio, who was one of Diddy's lawyers, represented one of the Alexander brothers here. And so what we are going to get into talking about is the sex trafficking, drugging, and rape trial involving the three Alexander brothers, whose names are Tal, Oren, and Alon, and they are monsters. They are fucking monsters. But guess what? They were found guilty today on all counts, including the most serious of sex trafficking. And I think there was a part of me that after I saw the outcome of the Diddy trial, and as this case was simultaneously starting to be built, and then once all the charges were filed, I was like, oh God, are we just gonna go through all this again? Even though this was a open and shut case, but like so many of them, you can't expect that a jury will actually give a shit, that they will look at you. You can't expect that they're going to understand something like sex trafficking and find people guilty of it. So they were found guilty. All three of the brothers. They were found guilty on all charges that were filed. And sentencing happens in August, and just the sex trafficking charge by itself carries a lifetime sentence. So I want to believe that because of how resounding the guilty conviction was here, that they had been, just throughout this process, they had been denied bail. A lot of the media reporting around it just being so clearly indicative of how extensive and horrific their crimes were, that I do hope that they are going to feel the full weight of justice here. Been so jaded by victims not getting justice. Yeah. And they were also connected to Epstein. Now, the crimes that they were responsible for and ultimately convicted of have not been linked to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, but there were a batch of files that revealed a name of a woman who had accused the Alexander brothers. And they popped up in these Epstein files. And I think, too, that kind of made me feel cynical just because of the overall lack of any accountability for anybody in the Epstein world. And again, they had their own world, to be clear. This is not something where like there's been yet a proven link of crimes they committed linked with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. But it still just felt, it still has always just the feeling of cynicism these days being quite strong. So it's nice to have some actual good news to talk about here. Now, I will say the crimes that they were found guilty of are horrific. Horrific. So certainly nothing good there, but the outcome here is good news. And I remember when this story when I first saw it, and it was when I was starting to cover the Diddy case, And I think there was one point that I had planned to cover this, and then I had reached I think I had reached my max on being able to talk about like sex trafficking crimes and rich, powerful dudes raping and abusing. So I can't remember if I ever actually covered this on stream. So we are going to go through this now. And just remember that today they were found guilty of all counts. So as we go through the details of what they had been doing for decades, just remember that. Because as I said, it is horrific. So the Alexander brothers are 3 Israeli Americans. And you just hear that and you go, okay. Once again, Israel coming into play when we are talking about horrific sex crimes against women and girls. So their parents came from Israel. So they are Israeli American, and their father is a very, very, very rich and powerful businessman in Miami. So these men came from money, and then 2 of them, the twins, were very successful in luxury real estate. So they made a fuck ton of even more money working in luxury real estate, primarily in Miami and New York. And then their other brother is he was a successful entrepreneur as well, but they came from wealth, just to make that clear. And the crimes that they committed go all the way back to high school. I believe starting in sophomore year. So they started out as teenage boys who grew up incredibly rich, incredibly privileged, probably already being raised from an early age to believe that they could do anything that they wanted to in this world and never face punishment for it. And so in high school, that was where they began drugging and raping girls, participating in gang rapes. Sometimes it was one brother, sometimes it was 2, sometimes it was all 3. And this continued on for decades. And yet again, this was an open secret in the real estate world, where a lot of people had heard something, a lot of people knew someone, and every fucking time, this is how it goes. Because this shit, when these types of crimes are being committed by the rich and powerful, why should they have to go to extended lengths to hide? They're proud about it. They're bragging about it. They don't think they're going to be stopped, because why the fuck would they? They are the type of people who this world is designed to enable and protect. And for a long time it did. So for decades, all 3 of the Alexander brothers used their wealth and high-profile connections to drug and rape dozens of women and teenage girls. I believe prosecutors said it was over 60 women and girls that these 3 brothers collectively drugged, raped, trafficked, abused for over 2 decades. In one instance, after a 17-year-old was drugged and raped by Alon, he sent a message to his brother Oren saying, "I took down a 17-year-old. The brothers often documented and bragged about their crimes because they always believed their status and money would protect them. But it is over. They were convicted on all charges, including the most serious of sex trafficking."
A jury has found 2 luxury real estate agents and their brother guilty of sex trafficking. Prosecutors accused the three Alexander brothers of using their money and influence to lure women into luxury trips and parties where they would drug, assault, and rape women for more than a decade. The brothers' attorneys argue in court that while the brothers' behavior could be seen as crude or inappropriate, they did not commit a federal crime. And we see Stephen Romo in Misty.
Yeah, of course, the argument, the defense they tried to use is that these men were womanizers, that everything was consensual, that they were just guilty. The crime that they were guilty of was being we're being fuckboys. We're being womanizers. And the jury saw otherwise. They saw everything laid out in front of them, which included photos and videos and other documentation from the men themselves bragging and showing off their sex crimes, videos of them raping girls, drugging girls. There was one hard drive that was found in one of their apartments that was some sort of handbook on how to justify raping women and girls. And that included things like it's not rape if she's too afraid to go to the police. It's not rape if she is, fucked up and nobody believes her.
Harris joining us now on this. Stephen, the brothers face up to life in prison. Talk about what we saw over the course of this trial. Bring us all up to date.
Yeah, it
Tom,
is
this trial
jaw-dropping.
going on for more than a month, and the allegations from these 11 accusers we heard from, they were hard to listen to. The brothers, of course, denying these accusations that they drugged and raped these women and girls. Two of the women said that they felt paralyzed before they were assaulted by Orrin and Alon Alexander. Prosecutors also said Orrin Alexander videotaped himself with an incapacitated 17-year-old girl back in 2009. That led to the charge of exploitation of a minor. The brothers were accused of using their wealth and status to lure these women in. Prosecutors say they used a playbook of repeated tactics with the women and girls over the course of years. Now, the defense tried to undermine that, saying that the sex was consensual and that prosecutors were really trying to criminalize dating. The brothers' attorneys also kind of admitted that the men were womanizers, but said that it's not criminal. The defense team had asked the jurors in closing to not just convict these men because they did not like their lifestyle, saying that it wasn't a crime. But the jurors, they didn't agree. They sided with the prosecution. Yeah. We actually have a statement from the prosecution that we just got in saying this verdict cannot undo the effects of heinous abuse the Alexanders, many victims endured, but it does send a message. New Yorkers want to bring an end to sex trafficking in all our communities.
So
Tom?
what they would do,
Misty,
what they would do is something that I've talked about. I experienced, became aware of when I worked in nightclubs. Is they would, they would show off their money, invite women and girls to very fancy after parties. They had a huge celebrity network. So one 17-year-old was drugged and raped at, I think it was Zac Efron's apartment. Now, he was not connected. He was not accused of any crimes, but just to kind of paint the picture of this world of the rich and famous that these men inhabited. And she was invited to a party, an after party at Zac Efron's apartment or his penthouse. And that was where she was drugged and raped. And they would also invite women and girls on these really fancy trips. And this was something I talked about where in the nightlife world that young girls and young women are offered these free trips to Miami and Vegas and Cancun. And it's very, come on the private plane. And then we're all staying at this mansion and we're going to go to the most expensive nightclubs, most expensive dinners, and it's all free. And it's, it's all like, you just have to come and have fun. And then there being the transactional element that a lot of times then girls and women end up in a position where they are there to be coerced into having sex with these wealthy clients and their friends, would take them to the Hamptons, and then they'd have no escape from there. Exactly. So these guys were often drugging these girls and women as well. But this just gets into what I've talked about a lot, which is how these very high profile, wealthy type of worlds operate, in that they will take women and girls to these very fancy locations, and then they have no way out. They are essentially stuck there. And whether or not it's that they're being drugged, or that it's they're coerced into having sex with these men.
You think was the key moment here, or testimony in this trial, that led to this verdict, and how severe do you think the sentence is likely to be?
Tom, so as Stephen laid out, there were 11 victims.
Hey, Carol, I just started watching your Resident Evil Requiem VOD today. I have to say, nobody plays like you. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Testified, two who were underage at the time that they were allegedly raped by the Alexander brothers. And that testimony was very, very impactful. It showed a pattern of conduct, similarities between the stories of those victims who took the stand. But in addition to that, there was an electronic
Wapmop, thank you for the 9 months. Queen Kina, thank you for the 5.
Defense to contest. There were messages between the brothers, texts and emails, and a blog which set out what was called a playbook, and a section that said it's not rape if, listing all of these things that the Alexander brothers were accused of doing and ultimately convicted of. So I do believe that led to the conviction. As far as penalty, there's a 15-year mandatory minimum for the sex trafficking conviction. The judge can tack on more. They face up to life. Each brother will be looked at individually, and they will be able to submit pre-sentencing reports in July, and ultimately they'll be sentenced in August. They'll be looking at the pattern of the crime, the nature of the crime, but also taking into account that they don't have a criminal history.
We thank you for watching.
I mean, they were so high powered in the luxury real estate industry that they had clients like the Kardashians. They were responsible for, I believe it was the most expensive penthouse sale of all time. It was a $240 transaction. They had so many connections. They came from wealth and only became even wealthier. And for a long time, they got away with these horrific crimes because of that, because of the money and power that they had that made them believe they were untouchable. Their clients included Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Jay-Z, Tom Brady, Michael Rubin, Leon Black. That name sound familiar? Also an Epstein affiliated pedophile, and Tommy Hilfiger. They were on Forbes 30 under 30. They were celebrated. They were connected. They were in the Epstein files. Here's how it allegedly worked. Nightclubs, dating apps, exclusive parties. They would find women, charm them, invite them somewhere incredible. The Hamptons, Aspen, a Caribbean cruise, private jets. Once the women were isolated, far from home, dependent on the brothers for a ride, a room, a way out, prosecutors say they were drugged. And in one instance, they drugged and raped a 17-year-old who's the daughter of a billionaire. And when she was accused of being a gold digger by filing a suit against these men, she's a billionaire's daughter. And she made the point, like, I don't want their money. I don't need their money. I just don't want them to have it. Like, this was not just an instance of, this is not just them going after girls and women in the way that Epstein's network did, where they tended to target very vulnerable girls who were prime for, who came from difficult backgrounds, had already experienced abuse by those closest to them. They were very much like the world I describe in nightlife, where sometimes these girls, sometimes these women were not were not from impoverished backgrounds in the way that the victims of Epstein tended to be. And yet still, this was an open secret in the real estate world, and they got away with it for so long. Once the women were isolated, prosecutors say they were drugged, then raped, sometimes by multiple men at once, sometimes by all three of the brothers. Sometimes while unconscious, over 40 women have come forward. The alleged abuse spans more than a decade. I mean, it goes all the way back to when they were in high school, participating in gang rapes. They weren't exactly subtle about it. Prosecutors found a blog called Bent on Bitches. It included a blog titled "It's Not Rape If." The blog was found on a hard drive inside of Tall Alexander's apartment. Then there were the texts. Oren told friends the boys need to hunt. We're running out of prey. Tal referenced wanting to trick and trap women. After an assault on a 17-year-old, Alon texted Oren, "I took down a 17-year-old. It's not rape if she doesn't remember, and it's not rape if she secretly wants it." This was like their fucking playbook that they used to justify the extensive raping and sexual crimes that they committed for a long time. There were emails about smuggling drugs referred to as party favors onto a cruise ship. Then there's the video. It was filmed in 2009. Oren Alexander recorded it himself on his laptop. The jury watched him adjust the camera angle. Then he climbed on top of a 17-year-old girl who appeared completely limp. Prosecutors told jurors, when you saw him pick up her limp legs and climb on top of her lifeless body, you knew what you were seeing. This video was played in court. You still haven't heard about this trial. 11 women testified. They never met each other. They lived completely different lives. Some were teenagers when it happened. One was a 16-year-old boarding school student who skipped prom to attend what she thought was a party. A photo of her sleeping and topless was found on the brothers' laptop. One was a UN intern. She witnessed an assault at a Hamptons mansion. She screamed at them to stop. They didn't. She grabbed her eyeliner and wrote "rapist" on the bedroom door as prosecutors told the jury they had one horrific thing in common. The trial started on January 27th. It ran for 5 weeks, and things got chaotic fast. A juror was dismissed mid-trial for telling other jurors he'd already decided the brothers were innocent before the defense even rested. The defense moved for a mistrial. It was denied. The prosecutors dropped 2 charges, alleging that defense hired private investigators had intimidated victims out of testifying. 2 women who were supposed to take the stand backed out. The jury went down to 1 remaining alternate. And while deliberations began, a new lawsuit landed. Tracy Tudor, who's a reality star of $1 Million Listing LA, sued Oren Alexander, alleging he drugged and assaulted her in a restaurant bathroom at a real estate event in New York. None of the 3 brothers testified. The defense was that these women were heartbroken, embarrassed after their money. Quote, "They're not drugging them, they're not raping them, but they're certainly pursuing them." Their lead attorney, Mark Agnafilio, just won acquittals on the most serious charges in Diddy's sex trafficking trial. Same lawyer. He told the jury that it takes courage to acquit. On the blog, prosecutors found he called it beyond tasteless, but said that there was zero proof the brothers wrote any of it. On all the evidence, he said, you can't build a house if you don't have any bricks. Prosecutors had a one-word response to all of it: nonsense. And then there's the Epstein connection. When the DOJ released over 3 million Epstein documents in January, the Alexander brothers were in them. A complaint described how at an Epstein party, Oren and Alon lured a 16-year-old model and her friend upstairs. Allegedly, the girls escaped. Allegedly, her friend wasn't as lucky. The document reads, Oren raped her best friend. It also alleges that Tal raped a 14-year-old girl at the same party. And oftentimes they would be in the same room. They would be in the same fucking room as they were drugging and raping these girls, the brothers would. And sometimes they would take turns. Sometimes it was 2 of them. Sometimes it was all 3 of them. And then they would text each other bragging about it. The judge in this case ordered the DOJ to stop releasing any more documents mentioning the Alexanders for the duration of the trial. The defense was worried about jury contamination. I do wonder if when this Epstein connection happened, if this might have swayed. I mean, goddamn, like there was so much clear-cut evidence in this case, and yet we know how these trials go. But I wonder if this played a role in the jury going, finding him guilty on all counts, including sex trafficking. I have to I believe that it did, because right now, with how much Epstein has been in the conversation and how much people have been talking about sex trafficking, it is something that I think people are hopefully understanding more and more how it works. I think too, having a an emotional response, because when you think of sex trafficking, you think of Epstein. And for most people, Epstein was a monster. Like, there is no doubt that he, for decades, committed so many horrific crimes and had this operation that included a lot of wealthy and powerful men who have not been taken down yet. That probably is what convinced jurors that defense worked in the Diddy case. Yeah, I mean, in the Diddy case, what we saw was we saw some prosecutorial errors. I think trying to get them on RICO just muddied the entire thing, but people not understanding that what Diddy did amounted to sex trafficking. And so he was not found guilty on that, which was the most serious charge. The brothers reportedly kicked off an aggressive PR campaign as soon as the allegations started to surface. There have been whisper campaigns about accusers, strategic leaks, a smear website, the death of a victim, a $500 million defamation lawsuit against the publication that first reported the story. Crisis PR doesn't make cases disappear, but it can make sure the public never gets loud enough to care. That might be what's happening here. And this was from 4 days ago, before the jury deliberations came to a close. Right now, 12 jurors are in a room in Manhattan. They are deciding whether Orrin, Alon, and Tal Alexander spend the rest of their lives in prison. The minimum sentence, if convicted, is 15 years. The maximum is life. And separate from this, they still face sexual battery charges in Florida and civil suits. So the real deal is the company that the $500 million defamation suit was filed against. They are a real estate journalist publication, and they were the first to break this story. And I'm going to watch a video by them. And then as far as the death of a victim, that is sadly Kate Whiteman. Bucket Hoop, thank you so much. Kate Whiteman, who was the first to come forward with her allegations. And without her, it would not have prompted a flooding of other women coming forward. And last year, at the end of last year, she was found dead at the age of 45. There was an investigation into her death that found her death was not suspicious. I mean, I think this was a woman who went through so much in her life, much like Virginia Giuffre, and I think the damage that was done to her was irreparable. But without her, without her, there's a lot of other women who would not have come forward. And so even though she's not here, I don't want to forget to mention her. And I don't know, it's one of those that this is where I want to be a spiritual person and go, I hope she is in a better place. And I hope that she knows that justice has been served and hopefully will continue to be served. A day after she made her accusations, a second woman brought a lawsuit against Orrin and Alon. And in the following months, a series of other women came forward to news publications with accusations of sexual assault. And I think oftentimes too, being the woman to really break the doors down, and then what follows is a flood of accusations and other stories of women who were harmed. I think that puts a person in a unique position, because it's very difficult, of course, to come forward as a survivor. But then on top of that, to be the first who does it, the one who takes that step, and then it results in others coming forward. And when I think about Virginia Giuffre, she was not the first person, but she was one of the most high profile and leading voices, and how much she did to pursue justice and how much she took on, and that it ultimately put her in a place that I think in reopening these wounds caused her to go back into a very dark spot. Having to be the one to open the door is very scary. Okay, this is from The Real Deal. This is the group of journalists who broke the allegations against the Alexanders.
So we're here at Alon's house. The last time I was here was when he and his brothers were arrested in December.
Is it weird to be here right now?
Yeah, it's a little weird. I remember I spoke to neighbors who talked about how the FBI had showed up, and they were like here by land and by boat, so by jet ski. So they were ordering him to come out of the house early in the morning.
The Alexander brothers.
Orrin Alexander was arrested.
Alexander brothers being questioned by police. 3 Alexander siblings are facing federal sex trafficking charges.
A sweeping sex trafficking case.
This conduct, as alleged, was heinous.
She didn't want to sleep with him, and he was forcing it, and she said no multiple times.
They were holding her down while the brother was having sex with her.
More accusers coming forward based on the chatter happening on Reddit.
The defendants allegedly.
And I think something too to realize is these men were so wealthy. They were charming, they were popular, they were good looking, and people who don't understand like how rape is about power and control will go, well, I don't understand why men like this would do something like that, because they could get so many women. They are super rich. They are good looking. They have, aren't these the types of guys that women would line up for? And it's because it's about power. It's always about power. It is always about power. That is at the core of rape, power and control. These men got off on drugging and raping and rendering these girls and women totally powerless.
Use their wealth and status to recruit and pay for the travel of their intended victims.
Very similar to what Sean Combs faces, very similar to what R. Kelly was convicted of.
What do you think you saw in his eyes?
It was evil. I say like he looked like he was possessed.
This is bad. This is as bad as it gets.
My name is Catherine Kalergis, and I'm a reporter at The Real Deal. I've been a reporter at The Real Deal for 10 years, and I cover the luxury residential real estate industry and new condo development, as well as scandals and other crazy things that happen in the market.
Hi, my name is Sheridan Wall, and I'm a reporter at The Real Deal. I've been with The Real Deal for about 2.5 years now. I cover residential real estate primarily in New York. We often cover national issues as well, so anything
Like, it's amazing because it's not the typical publication that breaks these kinds of major sex trafficking and other sexual crimes in the way that New York Times and New Yorker and just publications that are the ones typical of covering and exposing these allegations against high profile wealthy men. It's not who you would expect. Yeah. When I first had heard that it was Real Deal, I was like, what is Real Deal? And I looked into them. I was like, wait, they're a publication that covers news in the real estate world. Like, it was amazing that this is a story involving men who come from the most elite, high-powered society, and were like, this is one of the worst sex trafficking and sexual crimes cases. And it's crazy how there's still, it doesn't seem to be something that a lot of people are aware of. And maybe it's because a lot of the focus has been on Epstein. A lot of the mainstream publications have been covering Epstein and everything to do with Epstein, but also, like, there is the Epstein connection here as well. Usually local publications would be the ones, right? But like, this isn't the Miami Herald, which broke the story in 2018, is still a newspaper that covers these kinds of stories. Like, The Real Deal, and not that they don't have journalists who are capable, obviously they do, but it's specifically real estate news, and it's just not the publication that you would think would blow the doors on a massive sex trafficking case.
in the residential real estate space is usually under my purview.
My name is Ellen Cranley. I'm a senior editor here at The Real Deal. I oversee coverage of the world of residential real estate.
My name is Oren Alexander, and I'm the co-founder of the Alexander team at Douglas Elliman. We're dealing with a very difficult market to navigate, considering there's a ton of demand.
I probably started hearing about Oren and Tal Alexander within my first year of reporting at The Real Deal, so that was 2015.
As soon as I had started the job and kind of assessing the news we cared about and who was shaping the market, they were pretty omnipresent names. Their father's career as a luxury spec home developer was pretty key to them getting into real estate in the first place. So I'd say kind of a tight-knit family unit from everything we know. They grew up pretty privileged lifestyle in South Florida, and it's interesting that their parents are still kind of pretty important characters in their lives and proceedings now.
A lot of people knew them. They kind of used that to help get their careers off the ground. Oren and Tal joined Douglas Elliman, I want to say in 2010, around then, and they were introduced to the then CEO, Howard Lorber, by way of their father. That's how they got their foot in the door, and it just kind of kept rolling from there.
After Ken Griffin bought his penthouse at 220 Central Park South, by the time I had joined The Real Deal, that had gotten them a lot of press and a lot of notice. That kind of propelled them into a sphere where, like, maybe people even outside of real estate might have recognized their name.
That really put them on the map. They set a record, so it's fair enough to put them on the map. Once you reach record-breaking deals like that and you have that kind of notoriety, that allows you to really specialize. So They were really picking and choosing projects. They have a lot of relationships with developers in New York and Miami, and that was really winning the business.
We have a lot of long-standing relationships in this city. I was born and raised here, and those type
Such a skeezy fucking industry.
relationships are really the key today to get those
There's
off
so
market
much.
properties.
There's so much
Paul
wealth
was
and
living
power.
at 432 Park Avenue, which in New York is a really well-known address. Oren was is buying homes, like mansions in Miami Beach. They were kind of like talked about as people who were like these like flashy young guys.
They were somewhere in the middle of being extremely showy and extremely public. There's a spectrum of brokers who are at the top of the market. A lot of really seized on controlling their own image.
There's kind of like two classes. There's those that are really in the public eye, and then those that are very, very private. And they were definitely part of this kind of like newer generation of brokers that were like big on social media. We're not press shy. We're like really okay with a lot of publicity.
Oren and Tal really built their business working with very wealthy hedge funders, finance executives,
Moviador,
lawyers,
thank you so much.
You know, people who were the buyers you want to have if you're, you know, a top luxury agent. And the way they did that was they would fly on private planes and party with them, have dinner with them, go to the same places that all of these people went to really get in on that world.
They were known for kind of like living the lifestyle of their clients. Like they were always posting about going on these trips. I think there's like an old photo of them in the desert on a camel, and like they were always at Art Basel and at all of these kind of like big kind of tentpole events where all their like wealthy clients were also attending.
Who we first cared about is Tal and Oren. They kind of built a reputation as being top brokers over the course of a decade at Douglas Elliman before launching their own company.
I'm here with Oren Alexander. He's a co-founder of Official, which is a side-powered
Yeah, Ivanka and Jared were some of their clients as well.
brokerage. Oren is a former top agent at Douglas Elliman who recently decided to branch out on his own. So I was very curious, Oren, what prompted the move? I mean, obviously we're doing great at Elliman, one of the top agents of the company. What made you say, all right?
People who went to school with them say they were bragging about this stuff. They were participating in gang rapes when they were in high school. That's when they started.
It's time to start my own shop.
So the Alexander brothers made headlines in 2022 when they left Douglas Elliman to found their own firm. And they were
Also, one of their clients was Leon Black. Leon Black, one of the fucking pedophiles who was good friends with Epstein. The founder of Apollo Global Management, billionaire.
backed by Side, which is a white label firm that essentially gives you the skeleton to get a company up and running, but you're in the driver's seat. So it was very publicly the two of them, but they also had three co-founders behind the scenes who they had worked with at Douglas Elliman. I say behind the scenes, they just weren't as public. I think the Alexanders were very willing to step into the face of this new company that was operating and doing well in South Florida and New York. In South Florida, they had a handful of new development projects on the very high end that they won from relationships with like Michael Stern and Jonathan Landau, firms that we also know in New York.
By the time I joined, they were also working out in LA shortly after they opened up in Colorado. So they were really kind of like growing this business.
Tal definitely seemed to be the face and more of the voice for when we were reporting news on their own company.
I hope that the civil lawsuits that are still happening bankrupt this entire family. I hope that this bleeds the entire Alexander family dry. Their father's company that is a security company that he formed after immigrating from Israel to Miami, I believe it was. I hope they drain all of their assets.
Official, expanding to Aspen, by all accounts doing incredibly well with new luxury agents joining the team. He seemed like a pretty clean-cut professional face for them.
So a lot of times we hear and often are referred to as lucky, beginner's luck. But the fact is we've been doing this now for over a decade. And specifically in the last month, we've closed, 3 record-breaking transactions. We've been able to grow a network that's unprecedented.
Being a real estate broker, but particularly being...
No, it's because you're rich kids. Huh? You came from extreme wealth and privilege. You were born with every single advantage. That's how this shit works. That's how the world works.
A real estate broker on the very high end of the
you never had to
market
tie
in
your
New
own
York
fucking
and South
shoes.
Florida, it must feel like the keys to the world sometimes. That's what it seems like when we talk to some of these people.
In New York and in Miami, real estate is a huge, huge business. And we're talking about like tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that these people are bringing in. You hear the deals that they've been a part of, and it's working with influential people. That's the image that they have out in the world.
A red hot panel tonight. Let me tell you, Oren once sold the most expensive house in Miami's entire history, right? Some $47 million for one house.
They're making all this money and they don't necessarily have a boss. I mean, they do, but it's not really in the luxury real estate world, like money talks.
The real estate industry is kind of crazy. You are basically your own boss, and you're sold on this idea that you can build your own business, have flexible hours, like not really report to anybody, but it's very difficult. I mean, you're paycheck to paycheck, you're living off of these commissions, you're dealing with clients who are very demanding or will back out of a deal. That also creates a situation where bad actors can thrive.
Some of the things that like maybe a full employee would be subject to, like a little bit more scrutiny and oversight and those types of things, like isn't necessarily true in the brokerage world.
You can get away with things because you're not an employee of the company, you're a contractor, and a lot of these brokerages just want to look the other way.
Real estate brokers are set up to act particularly independently, and there are issues with regulation that I think everyone in every market could raise, but particularly when you add enormous wealth and just kind of these golden keys to society, that can really just change the game.
I briefly worked for this luxury, I worked at this luxury residential building, and they bragged about being the like the most expensive, most luxurious in Los Angeles. And anyway, so I crossed paths with people who are in this world. They are some of the worst. Okay, they are some of the worst motherfuckers. These ego bloated, nasty fucking privileged shit stains who work in luxury real estate. And it's all about your Rolodex. It's all about, you know, not just you're like not just having very famous, wealthy, connected clients, but you yourself showing off that this is a lifestyle that you don't just sell these homes to the rich and famous, you also live in these homes. It's all the aesthetic of having tons and tons of money.
Reported a story on the underregulation of the industry and how bad actors can thrive in this environment. The process for seeking justice really is very difficult and oftentimes doesn't result in anything. What happens is these agents who are, maybe subject to this kind of abuse or ethical violation or breaking the law, they don't really have any options. For the most part, like a lot of these complaints that are filed to the state, if people even know that they can file complaints to the state, they take years. Maybe they don't even result in a favorable outcome. And so it just allows kind of the situation to continue. It's more common than you'd think. And I think part of it is because of like the pressure.
Don't make everything about Hassan Piker challenge difficulty impossible. Impossible. You guys, and by you guys, I mean singular chatter. Why does everything always have to come back to Hassan Piker? We are talking about some of those notorious sex traffickers who worked in high-end real estate luxury, who were just convicted on all charges today, including sex trafficking, and you are still thinking and talking about Hassan? In my fucking stream. What is wrong with you people? Get them banned. And by that, get them banned. Literally. Guys, there's a genocide. Fuck off all the way. Fuck off all the way. Fucking imbecilic losers. I don't understand when, like, Epstein is right there, and yet these people are so, it's like you want to bring things back to a person, you bring it back to someone like Jeffrey Epstein. When we talk about the Epstein class, when we're talking about these extensive crimes of sex trafficking, when we're talking about the lifestyles of the richest, most powerful, most privileged people in this world, it truly is Hassan Piker derangement syndrome. And I am so sick and tired of them coming into this chat and doing that shit. You know, it's like on top of it, on top of having Hassan derangement syndrome, where I'm sure y'all do this, they go into his chat, then they come in here. I am so exhausted by it. He was a 3-year follower. Jesus Christ. Do they just bide their time? Are you just waiting 3 years? Oh my God. Like, literally every single thing I post on the internet, anytime I am streaming, it all comes back to Hassan. These people are so fucking crazy. They are so narrow-minded. They truly believe the world revolves around Hassan. It's so, like, no matter what I post on a platform like Twitter, always comments about Hassan. I'm like, do you understand that you are the one who is not normal? You are not normal. That you go to somebody who's not Hassan Piker in the first place, who is like, no matter what I post about, they will only ever talk about, like, they have to always somehow try and bring it back 1 degree of separation to their Hassan obsession, no matter what it is that is the topic of discussion. Holy shit. Anyway.
Pressures that exist in the way the industry is set up.
The culture rewards making money and closing deals. And that's what's important. I think more people are paying attention to their relationship with their brokerage. More people are starting to question, like, maybe agents should have more oversight. For the most part, that's how the industry operates.
And today we're talking about the hot luxury residential.
Do they do this to Will? No. Will doesn't do the content I do, plus he's a man. I am incapable of formulating a singular thought that is not me just getting it from Hassan. It doesn't matter if I'm talking about something Hassan has never talked about. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. As a woman who covers what I cover, there is no world in which I can formulate a single thought of my own. So no, they don't do this to Will. Like, I can be covering a story that no one else is covering, or that at the very least Hassan has not talked about once. And this is not me being like, why isn't Hassan talking about every single story I talk about? The point being that there's a lot of things I cover, and I cover from my perspective, and it still doesn't matter because I'm a woman. I can't even say, hey, stop killing children. Like, that's the craziest thing, is how deranged these people are. That if I say, stop killing kids, they will make that about how I am just, repeating what Daddy Hassan says. I'm like, you people are fucking crazy. You are so unwell. That basic tenets, basic, like, the most fundamental things. Hey, we should not kill children. Hey, we should protect children. We should protect children. They cannot imagine someone believing that on their own. Like, many people believing that, because everything revolves around their obsessed hatred of of Hassan. It is a prison of their own making. And that's why I get frustrated too when I know people who are not, who mean well in my community, who watch Hassan as well. Maybe they're primarily Hassan watchers and come watch me after, who don't allow me to exist on my own when they still do the same thing where everything still revolves around Hassan, that like I cannot exist as an individual. That everything stems from him.
Market. Oren Alexander.
I don't know if it's a uniquely like female experience. When I think to when I maybe heard early rumors about these guys, it was just sort of, oh, you know, they kind of go about their business and in a pretty specific way.
When we talk about rumors, I'll say that for me in New York, a lot of what I had heard was less about, you know, what grew to be allegations, but a lot about business behavior.
It just seemed like they left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, which is not rare for a real estate broker. I think that kind of personality and being aggressive and burning bridges can work for a lot of people.
I had heard from other brokers in the city that they had a way of doing business that not everybody agreed with.
Very regularly, I think we would get tips about specific allegations that I remember kind of being more towards the end of sexual assault and having to do with alleged female victims.
Within a couple of years of covering this beat, I would hear rumors about something that may have happened in high school, possibly allegations of a sexual assault. Nothing ever came of the allegations at the time, so it wasn't a specific conversation that came up. It was, oh, did you hear about what may have happened in high school at a party? But you also heard so much about how agents didn't like them that it was hard to kind of figure out what was rumor and what was true.
I'm just so tired. I'm so tired of open secrets. I'm so tired of when finally rich, powerful men are exposed for being sex criminals and whatever industry they are a part of, that it's like, oh yeah, everybody knew for years. Oh yeah, no, word on the street was always that these men were awful. And they just get away with it because that's the fucking culture, because that's how it's our fucking world works. This world that's designed to protect and enable men like the Alexanders. And they were well aware of that. That's why they bragged about raping and drugging girls openly. They were proud of it because they were like, nothing's going to happen to us. Why would it?
We don't report on rumors. We hear a lot of rumors about people. The place that rumors have in our job is sort of a file away. It's something to keep in mind, and I think it's something to be aware of if you're hearing the same thing from multiple people, which still only amounts to a rumor, but it's significant.
What I had heard was, and what other people I think had heard, was that there was a party in high school. Oren and possibly Alon, who is his identical twin, were taking turns raping somebody. There was no record of it that we could find. I don't really know what else was out there.
Without really a lawsuit filed, there's not much more to go on. So really, I think that there were just a couple times it bubbled up to the amount that we believed that there was something solid enough we could find and hopefully kind of break through just conversations in New York and Miami circles.
When something like that is circulating, you want to make sure as a journalist that you are doing your due diligence and looking into it and trying to see if there's any truth to it. I had over the years been asked to look into it. I had heard from sources like, you should ask around, try to find out what's been going on, but nobody ever came forward with allegations. And anybody who I spoke to didn't have specifics. And I think that that is probably something that came up with other journalists, because these brothers, Oren and Tal Alexander, were smart at working with the media, and they had relationships with reporters at top publications, and so they were great at getting publicity for their deals. That was kind of part of their game.
We initially started looking for law.
Yeah, and it's the PR game. When you are connected like this, when you have money like this, you have friends in media. You have fancy PR teams who help dump stories about you in the media that make you look good. And there's one actually, let's finish this and then I'll cover it after.
Catherine kind of got tipped off that somebody was close to having something solid about these rumors and kind of lightly floated allegations we had heard for years, and certainly her in South Florida had heard for years. But this time when we looked, there was something, and somehow nobody else had found it. But nothing.
Tag PR was involved early on with the brothers when the first victim came forward with a lawsuit to smear her. Text messages and screenshots reviewed by the Times show that Tag held calls and sent emails to Orrin and Tal Alexander and at least 2 other executives at Official. Yes, it is the way that rich people can wield the justice system against accusers. When you have a woman come forward and allege something about a powerful man, he will take her out with a defamation suit. And same with publications that are not the New York Times and cannot withstand. So like you have independent journalists like a Taylor Lorenz who gets threatened all the time, who, doesn't have the backing of, I just use her as an example, but, who doesn't have the backing of a major news publication to protect her from lawsuits by wealthy individuals and companies who want to shut down either, the stories that she's writing, that journalists are reporting on, that aren't necessarily about sex crimes. It's like they'll do this when they want to kill a story.
Prepared me for reading these lawsuits and seeing these allegations actually spelled out.
Roughly 60 women made allegations against the Alexander brothers. What is TAG? So TAG is the agency group. They are one of the most high-profile, powerful public relations and digital agencies, and they work with a lot of global brands, celebrities, industry leaders, and they were employed by the Alexanders. Okay, I want to cover this from, let's see. Yeah. Years before they were charged with sex crimes, Orrin and Alon Alexander took legal action to find a mystery blogger who claimed that they had committed sexual assault as teenagers. About 15 years before they were charged with sex trafficking, an anonymous blog post appeared. It asked a shocking question. Does anyone know whatever happened to Orrin and Alon Alexander, the 2 twins who raped that girl at that party in 2003? This is from 2000. This piece is from 2024. This was in the Times. The post, which later disappeared from the internet, included graphics, specific details of a sexual assault describing a victim running barefoot from a party before being treated at 2 different hospitals. Published on December 12, 2009, the blog post was made to look like a newspaper article. The New York Times could not identify who wrote the post and could not verify that the incident occurred. But the post tarnished the image that the twins had been cultivating as socialites and young men beginning their careers. Orrin Alexander had just started working at Douglas Elliman, one of the largest real estate brokerages in the country, and Alon Alexander had joined his family's private security services company. As soon as the post was published, the brothers took an aggressive, multi-pronged approach to try to identify the person who wrote it and to scrub it from the internet. Their dogged efforts, including legal action in 2 different courts and combative correspondence with the mystery writer, offer a window into the brothers' past. These actions foreshadowed what federal prosecutors have called a pattern of intimidation that Orrin, Alon, and their older brother Tal would use for decades to silence women who accuse them of rape or sexual assault. And remember, The Real Deal, which is the video that we just watched, they were the group that first broke these allegations in 2024. And they were The Alexanders filed a $500 million defamation suit against them. Like, this is what we mean by how high-powered, wealthy rapists will use defamation suits to silence accusers. Susan Nichelis, a lawyer for Oren, and Joel De Niro, a lawyer representing Oren and Alon, declined to comment on the blog post. Though the post does not mention Tal, his lawyer Deanna Paul referred to it as libel. In an emailed statement, she said anyone facing such a post should take legal or judicial steps to address it. Repeated false media attacks are obviously dangerous. On December 11th, almost 15 years to the day of the blog post, Oren, Alon, and Tal were arrested in Miami on federal sex trafficking charges. They continue to await arraignment in jail on those charges, which now today they were found guilty of everything, including sex trafficking. In addition to the federal charges, they face charges connected to 3 separate assaults. They both pleaded not guilty, or state charges. They both pleaded not guilty to those as well. A friend of the Alexander family faces state charges as an accomplice in one of those assaults. His name is Ohad Fisherman. He has pleaded not guilty, and his lawyer confirmed that he is home on bond. Federal prosecutors say the brothers began engaging in acts of sexual violence while still in high school in Miami in the early 2000s. At least 40 women have been interviewed with allegations of assault dating back 20 years. For example, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York wrote that Tal and Oren filed a police report alleging harassment by a woman who said she had been assaulted. Tal Alexander also threatened defamation lawsuits, and Alon compiled a file on each publicly identified victim as part of an apparent attempt to discredit their accusers. In the case of the 2009 blog, Oren sent threatening messages to an email address linked to the anonymous writer. The brothers hired an investigator who specializes in cyber attacks and later took legal action against Jay, John, and Jane Doe in New York and Florida courts. The Times reviewed the legal documents and a screenshot of the blog post and interviewed the investigator that they hired. A link to the post now reads, "Blog has been removed." The blogger described an incident claimed to have occurred in 2003 when the twins would have been sophomores at Michael M. Kropp Senior High School in North Miami Beach. The blog was titled, "What Became of Oren Alexander and Alon Alexander," and was written to look like an article syndicated by the Associated Press. Here's the Miami Herald article of that incident. Who could forget? The blogger wrote, providing a URL that mirrors the style of MiamiHerald.com. No such article was ever published in the Miami Herald, and a close read of the post shows errors. It quotes Miami sheriff, but at the time of publication, Miami-Dade was the only county in Florida that did not have a sheriff. Its headline doesn't follow the house style of either Miami Herald or the Associated Press. Within hours of the posting, a second blog with the same title, "What Became of Oren Alexander and Alon Alexander," appeared on the internet. This one was filled with glowing stories of volunteerism and hard work by Oren and Alon. Yeah, I wonder who posted that one. Its first post was biographical, catching readers up on the twin brothers' college education and new jobs. They do a number of social charity causes by helping out poors and making the poor people move forward. This is an actual quote from a follow-up blog to one that was clearly trying to expose them as rapists. And I think whoever wrote it stylized it so that people would think it was that they would take it seriously, that they would think that this was an actual piece of journalism from a reputable publication. And then this follow-up happens with the same title to fuck with the SEO, of course. And they literally wrote this line, "They help out the poors." They help out, so kind. Helping out the poors. Like, it's crazy. Solio, thank you for the 23 months. Whispers, thank you for the 13 months. When asked whether Oren and Alon created the favorable blog, their lawyers declined to comment. Oren reached out to Steve Wagner, a Manhattan lawyer, weeks after the post appeared online. In September 2010, Wagner filed a summons against Jay, John, and Jane Doe in New York Supreme Court, with legal action taken against someone anonymous that is followed by subpoenas designed to identify the person, and reached out to Glenn Derdick, the investigator who found a Gmail address connected to the blogger. The Times viewed a transcript of the email exchange. At 1:56 a.m. on July 17th, 2010, Oren sent an email to the blogger. "We got your IP address," he wrote. "We went easy on you before. That's it. Ha." The blogger responded at 2:04 a.m. "So you remember the rape?" The conversation was tense. Oren and the blogger sent 14 emails back and forth over a span of 3 hours. Oren appears to think the blogger is someone he went to high school with and threatens to, quote, "have a talk with your parents." The blogger says that Oren clearly isn't aware whom he's corresponding with and refers to multiple women allegedly assaulted by the brothers. "What's the matter?" the email from the blogger reads. "Lost count on all your victims?" The blogger was right that Oren Alexander did not know the person's identity. He also did not have the IP address. His email was a bluff. After filing the summons on behalf of Oren and Alon, Wagner never pursued the lawsuit. In January 2011, Oren went around Wagner and reached out to Dardick, who's the investigator, directly, forwarding the email exchange and asking for help identifying the blogger. They asked if I could look at the emails they'd gotten and if I could determine what the IP address was, Dardick told the Times, but he wasn't able to. He told Alexander that the brothers would need to file a lawsuit and subpoena Google to obtain more information. Dardick said that he had never heard from the brothers again and that he was not paid for his services. Like, I know it's not the worst crime here, but of course they did not pay this guy. Over the next 2 years, more glowing blogs appeared on the internet about the brothers' accomplishments and character. A post from July 2011 reads, "Today, Alon and Oren Alexander are very successful young professionals that remain very charitable as well. They work together to grow their respective businesses." Another blog noted in August 2013 that they had topped a most eligible bachelor's list compiled by Hampton's Journal, that their father had taught them the value of hard work, and that they understood the significance of socializing. That's what makes them so successful and appealing, that today they are the hottest bachelors in the Hamptons, the blog entry reads. It appears that the facts were slightly mixed up and the honor had been bestowed by Hamptons magazine. Months later, in December 2013, working with a different lawyer, the twins filed a lawsuit in Florida State Court. Their mother, Orly Alexander, notarized the twins' signatures on the complaint. The defendant is listed as John Doe. The defendant, whose residence and citizenship are uncertain at this time, the complaint reads, has published false attempts about the brothers, including that they had committed rape. This is an utter falsehood, the complaint reads. The brothers were granted a temporary injunction in January 2014, and Judge Donald Grinsowitz of the 9th Judicial Circuit Court of Florida ordered John Doe, as well as any electronic communication provider, to remove the blog. The blog was taken down sometime after. In April of 2016, it was noted that there had been no activity in the case for at least 10 months and ordered the matter dismissed. So, the mother knew? Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. The parents were supporting their sons all the way through, as was, I think it was Alon's wife, who today was like seen with her head in her hands as the jury read out the guilty verdict. I mean, these parents gave their sons, they gave their sons everything. They created this world for them where they grew up thinking they were untouchable. Like, they started doing this shit in high school. Why is it that these rapists always have a reputation as playboys or desirable bachelors? So this is one way that rich abusers like the Alexanders get to control their, get to fashion their reputations for the public, because they have PR teams who plant really glowing profiles and stories of them, because they use their money to and influence to get on like Forbes 30 under 30 type of lists. They pay for press. In this case, this was a blog that obviously they or had somebody fabricate that would anyone who's Googling them, this will pop up. And this was still early on. And then later on, you know, like I said, it got fancier. They had publications like Forbes and and whatnot. And then they bury anything about them that is negative through lawsuits, through threats. Was her head in her hands when they were reading the text messages where they were gleeful about their crimes? Yeah, good question.
We reported on 2 lawsuits alleging that top broker Oren Alexander and his twin brother Alon Alexander had raped and sexually assaulted 2 women in separate incidents in New York more than a decade ago. We found the complaints, we reported on them in early to mid-June, and a few days later, Oren Alexander stepped back from his position at his brokerage Official, which he had co-founded almost 2 years ago after leaving Douglas Elliman. And there were some efforts to kind of, on Official's part, to distance themselves from, these allegations and the seriousness of them and all of that. So as we continued to report, Official seemed to kind of make more steps in that direction. They said that their other partners, Nicole Ogie, Richard Jordan, and Andrew Wachvogel, said that they were in the process of removing him as an owner. Since then, also, we reported that Tal Alexander, who is Oren's brother and partner, was also accused of rape in an alleged incident that included his brother Alon and that Oren allegedly orchestrated.
So we routinely kind of look in the court systems for court cases involving, major real estate players on both the residential and the commercial side. So we had done a sweep and we happened to find these, the first 2 lawsuits that were filed against Oren and Alon. The first 2 lawsuits that we found were filed under the Adult Survivors Act.
So this is Kate Whiteman, who died at the end of last year and did not live to see her rapists found guilty in a court of law.
Which is the same kind of provision that E. Jean Carroll sued former President Trump under. It was a New York state law that temporarily kind of eliminated the statute of limitations for civil sexual assault cases. Those were the first 2 lawsuits, and then the other lawsuit that we wrote about more recently, the one involving Tal, that one was filed under the New York City gender-motivated violence protection law, and there was a recent extension of that law that opened up that statute of limitations.
Oren and Tal Alexander are, top brokers in Miami and New York. They built their careers at Douglas Elliman. They started, I think, in maybe 2008 in New York, and they really...
And often civil lawsuits are the first kind of suits filed. They can prompt criminal investigations when there is evidence that comes up during discovery. So this is what happened with Diddy when Cassie filed a civil suit. And the New York Adult Survivors Act was a really important piece of legislation because it provided a window for adult survivors of abuse to bypass the statute of limitations that so often is what prevents people from seeking accountability, from getting accountability, from justice. And so we see this happen a lot where the first step is a civil lawsuit because it's the only option that survivors of abuse have, but then evidence that is gathered through the process of discovery, through depositions, can provide enough evidence for criminal charges to be filed.
Mastered kind of the art of social media and the luxury broker and dealing with the 1%. And so they gained this big following. They represented major clients, celebrities and billionaires in record deals in both, New York and Miami and other parts of the country. And I believe
why there's no statute of limitations on murder, right? Weird that there's one for sexual violence. Yeah. Because murder is seen as such a severe crime that there's no there's no statute of limitations on pursuing justice for murder victims, whereas rape and sexual abuse, which we know often takes years for survivors to come to terms with. Maybe they came forward a lot earlier, but were not believed, not taken seriously, just did not have any legal avenues. So it is it's terrible. It's terrible the way that rape is still treated as not a severe enough crime and is subjected to strict legal barriers, like how long ago it happened. Wasn't even considered a crime under certain circumstances. Yeah.
I believe even like a referral in London. So they were very good at building that network and building that profile online. And so, they were the top brokers at Elliman. They were, in our rankings, both in New York and Miami for years. So that's kind of the significance of it, is that, these are obviously very serious allegations, but I think kind of the reaction, after and
also, when someone is a victim of murder, you cannot use the line of, well, why did you wait so long to report it? Because they're dead. But someone who is a victim of rape is often leveled with that accusation of, oh yeah, well then why did it take so long to report it?
And the additional lawsuit and the way that the company has tried to kind of distance itself kind of shows like how big this has gotten since we first reported on those 2 complaints.
The first 2 lawsuits, the attorneys for the plaintiffs had, included a provision in each that had basically said while these were isolated incidents, the lawsuits were about a very specific claim. It was part of a larger pattern of behavior by Oren and Alon, which were...
It's also how a lot of times the police won't do anything about stalking situations until something bad happens, where it's basically, if it results in you being murdered by your stalker or in a domestic violence situation, you end up dead. When it's too late, essentially, then we can try and do something about it.
Who were the 2 defendants in the first one. After we published, the response that we saw on social media was, we had hundreds of comments on our Instagram post where people kind of generally said that maybe this was something that they had heard about before, that maybe something like this had happened to them.
We were also following the industry reaction to all of this, and we reached out to the developers that Official, which is the Alexander's firm, was working with on new projects, and starting to kind of hear about like some of that changing because the developers probably don't want to be associated with these kinds of allegations, regardless of, whether they're true or not. One thing was Michael Stern has a project, his firm JDS in Miami, that's a Dolce & Gabbana branded condo development. We're hearing that they are, separating from Official. We've reached out to Michael Schwo and his team about the Raleigh development in Miami Beach. And then there's a smaller project also in South Florida, Indian Creek Residences, and they're declining to comment, but there is kind of like, the bigger picture. Like, it's not just these 2 agents, it's the company that they co-founded, it's the agents that they brought on, and what is going to happen with them. Are they going to go to other firms? Are they going to stick with Official? Is Official going to, remain in place? So we'll be, continuing to follow that. I do believe that you'll still kind of see some movement there because there seems to be more as we continue reporting. On 3 lawsuits in total so far. We did speak with the plaintiff's attorney who represented the first 2 alleged victims, and he had said that he had, in the days after our story, had heard from 28 more women who had similar claims. So I think that if these allegations are true, looking at how this could have gone on for so long.
D&G condos while people are living on the streets.
Until 2024 when the allegations go back, more than a decade. And I think in like the Wall Street Journal had reported that some victims were from high school. So it's really like a very wide range of time if this is true. And so we're going to dive into that. So we're continuing to follow this story. You can reach me at kk@therealdeal.com and Sheridan.wall at.
Okay, but just remember, y'all, just remember, as angry as we feel, and that anger is justifiable because this is still a world in which rich and powerful abusers get away with so much shit. These motherfuckers were found guilty of every single charge. The jury looked at the evidence, they heard the defense, they heard the prosecution, and came to the conclusion that all three of these brothers used their power, used their resources, used their connections to drug and rape dozens of women and girls and silence, or attempts to silence allegations and any noise that popped up over the years. And that's on Women's Month. Also in situations, even if there's physical abuse evidence, if shelters are full, the person has nowhere to go, safer to go, nothing will be done. I remember in the hospital, one teen girl had evidence of being abused physically and the staff and cops were laughing at her. Yep. Yeah, victims are not taken seriously. I got a massive settlement a few years ago and people think all the money is because I'm a Nepo. I just don't want to trauma jump, but the process is horrible. Yeah, like there is still the belief that a survivor of abuse filing a civil lawsuit means that they are a gold digger, means that clearly they're making this up so that they can get a bunch of money out of it, which is so because for the millionth time, often the only avenue survivors can pursue are civil lawsuits. And there were a lot that resulted from legislation like the New York Adult Survivors Act. And also, when somebody is a victim of rape, for example, the trauma that they experience does not begin and end with the instance of that rape. Like, this is something where for years and years, sometimes for the rest of somebody's life, what they have to deal with, how it affects their career, how it affects their personal lives. Unfortunately, sad cases of victims of abuse who die by suicide, who are struggling so much with what happened to them. And when they come forward to try and expose these crimes and these criminals, that further re-traumatizes them, that it opens them up to hell. I don't want to detract from the video topic, but it's stuff relevant. Overall topic of sexual assault by powerful men. Not sure if you caught one of the stuff. Certain Twitch streamers and former Twitch streamers. No. I don't know what that is. This will set back the platform for female content creators. I don't know what that is. Victim of sexual assault from one of my parents. Took about a decade of living on my own, but in the same city before I essentially ran away and began to process it. I am so tired of having to explain the same things over and over again as to how trauma does not just work one way, that abuse does not just look like one thing, that it takes years, and sometimes victims of abuse never come to terms with what they experienced, how society and all of its institutions work against victims of abuse, does not protect them. It does not protect them, which then can result in them being victimized. And then after they're victimized, being punished for being victims. So this is the 17-year-old that I mentioned who, after she was drugged and raped by Alon, he texted his brother and said, "I just took down a 17-year-old." While she and her friends took a trip to Colorado, twin brothers Alon and Oren Alexander drugged them in a club, then raped her in a hotel room, a witness told the jury in a Manhattan courtroom at the brothers' sex trafficking trial on Monday. At the twins' trial, where they stand accused alongside their older brother Tal on 12 counts of sex trafficking and assault, the woman whose name New York law is not publishing because she's a purported victim of sexual assault, said she met them in January 2017 at a nightclub with two friends. They were celebrating their senior year in high school. At the packed club, Alon pulled them out of the crowd to their table, the woman testified. Upon learning the witness was 17 years old, he told her, "That's hot." He then pulled up her turtleneck sweater to expose her abdomen without her consent and asked whether she had a six-pack. He made her 2 drinks at the table, which the woman said she believes were drugged, and she testified that her head felt heavy. And later that night, it was as though her body was severed from her brain, a feeling she had never experienced upon drinking alcohol before. After a little over an hour at the club, Alon and Oren asked the girls to go back to their residence for an after party, telling them there'd be lots of other people. However, upon arriving at their destination, all the woman and her friends found was a dark, empty hotel room. That is where Alon Alexander shoved his fingers inside her pants, then in her vagina, the woman said, before instructing her to move to the bathroom where he raped her. "I could feel his nails scraping inside of me. I could feel myself tearing," she said, sobbing. "I was really scared because I wanted him to stop." After Alon Alexander attacked her, the woman said she saw blood on the ground underneath her. That scared her, she said, and in her shaken state, she immediately started cleaning it up and apologizing to him for bleeding. He told her she should never apologize for that. "I was so scared," she said, crying. "He just did what he wanted." When she walked out of the bathroom, she saw one of her friends passed out on a bed, drugged, she believes, and Oren Alexander on top of her other friend on the second bed. That friend subsequently ran out of the room saying, "This is really bad. I don't want to be here," the woman told the jury. Later, she told the witness that she had to use her fingers to prevent Oren Alexander from inserting his penis into her and that she was terrified of the men. After the woman's testimony, government prosecutors read a message from Alon to Oren sent after the woman said she was raped, which read, "I took down a 17-year-old." The witness, who has filed a civil suit against Alon and Oren, said her suit wasn't about the money when asked about it on the stand. "The money would not impact my life because my father is a billionaire. I don't need their money. I just don't want them to have it. When I was 17, they took something from me that I didn't want to give. Now I want to take something from them that I know they don't want to give." The witness almost didn't take the stand Monday as the Alexanders' defense attorney suggested the trial should be paused because one of the jurors was hospitalized with the flu and couldn't appear in court. U.S. District Judge Valerie Caproni denied that request and said bringing in an alternate juror to replace him for the rest of the trial. Like, obviously, this is incredibly graphic and horrifying, and I just don't understand how there are people who do not understand that when you are violated in a manner like this, that is something that lives in your body, that you do not just get over it. It is not something where the violation occurs only during the actual act itself. That is trauma that manifests in the physical and mental, and you are opening yourself up to re-traumatizing your brain and your mind when you come forward and testify like this. And it is why this is no simple thing to do. And we know that most often survivors of abuse who come forward are made to be the villains in the situation, whether they are literally the ones who are criminalized or the way that they are publicly smeared, especially if they accuse someone who is very powerful. We see this happen all the time in celebrity cases of abuse. And this is it's no easy thing. This is no easy thing to process, to try and go through the legal system and also the court of public opinion. Like you would be having to live under a rock to not be aware of how society treats victims of abuse, the way that they will find any way to blame them for what happened to them, for something they did not consent to, for something that violated them. This is another instance. Around 2003, a teenage student at the prestigious Miami Country Day School said she was invited with a friend to a house party by students from a nearby high school. When the girls arrived, they realized they were the only guests. After drinking some Bacardi 151 offered to her, the woman now recalls she was led into a bedroom by the Alexander brothers, as well as one of their friends. She will never forget what happened next. She was pushed down on a bed. The boys held her arms and legs in an X shape. She remembers struggling and didn't know what to do, so she tried to play along. And you can hear, too, like, I don't know about y'all, but every time I hear somebody recount what happened to them, I hear then the subsequent accusations. Oh, well, you were having a good time. And the reality being that she was terrified and was trying to get out of the situation and tried the tactic of playing along. Oh, well, you willingly drank and you willingly went to this party. You willingly went to this hotel room. That does not mean that then you are willingly consenting to what happens to you after that point. They tried to take her pants off. She remembers seeing a camcorder. Someone opened the door and she ran out. Two friends of the woman confirmed her account, which she shared with them at the time. Oh, well, you shared this with people around you. Why didn't you report this to the police? To many in the brothers' orbit, the lawsuits came as no surprise. The assertions had swirled around them for roughly 2 decades, starting when they were high school students in Miami and later in New York as their careers took off at Douglas Elliman. Women and friends from all chapters of the three brothers' lives told the Journal that they were assaulted or knew of others who were. This account, which includes several previously unreported incidents, is based on interviews with more than 50 people who came in contact with the Alexanders during those periods and on documents reviewed by the Journal. And often it is clear the pattern, the detailed, the history of patterned abuse. And with the Alexanders, they were very partial to drugging their victims, and the circumstances that are often very, very similar, despite victims having nothing in common, never having heard one another's story, having nothing to do with one another, but still the circumstances being usually the same. The reporting gives a detailed picture of the nature and extent of the allegations, which include incidents dating back to high school, where students at the time said the brothers sometimes filmed encounters with women. Two complaints were brought to police. Oh, you mean there were things that were brought to you? There were allegations that were brought up to the police, and 3 women sought medical attention. It shows that more than a decade ago, a top executive at Douglas Elliman was warned by one of the brothers that an allegation against him would surface. Tall and his brother were known professionally for selling some of the most lavish homes in New York, Miami, and Aspen. In the real estate industry, they had a reputation as ambitious, hungry, young agents who used aggressive tactics to secure a deal or land a big client, and who used social media and the press to propel their names into the headlines. They did business with titans in the finance world, notably helping billionaire hedge fund manager Ken Griffin purchase a nearly $240 million apartment in 2019, setting a record for residential property in the U.S. Over the years, they also represented clients such as WeWork co-founder Adam Neumann, New York Mets owner Steve Cohen, and Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. They spent more than a decade at Douglas Elliman before starting their own firm, Official. Also just a stupid fucking name. Like, these people are such trash. They think that they are, these intellectuals, these very cultured, brilliant people, and they are just complete and total trash. Naming a real estate firm like it's a club. Exactly. More than half a dozen other women and men who attended Miami Country Day said people were frequently warned by fellow students to be careful around the Alexander brothers. The girls were told by their friends not to accept drinks from them at house parties. The warnings continued throughout the years. I'm just writing to let you know that if you're a girl and you know this guy, Tal, you need to be really, really careful, according to correspondence reviewed by the Journal sent from one woman to another in 2010. Like, that is a reality. Women who warn other women, they'll say, hey, this is a guy that you want to stay away from. This is somebody who you need to be careful around. Like, that has been a system in place because other systems fail. Other systems are not designed to protect women. Yeah, it's a code of, hey, be careful about this person. Many of the allegations against the brothers follow a similar pattern. Women or girls were told of a house party or gathering over the weekend, and when they arrived, they were the only guests. At times, the brothers or their friends would videotape or photograph the sexual encounters, according to the women and two men who had seen videos in high school. Oh my God. This is one of those, like, if you see something, say something. And I know that sometimes people do, they try to, and nobody takes it seriously. And I know that sometimes when you're young like this, you know that something is bad, but you don't know what to do about it. But my God, I mean, you think about, but then it's like, these were rich kids. These were rich kids. They were always going to be protected by that wealth. Tall and his brothers attended the public Dr. Michael Kropp Senior High School in Miami and were friends with some students at the private school. While the accused did not attend our school, we are saddened to learn about these alleged incidents from 20 years ago, said Miami Country Day spokeswoman Paula Montoya. The safety and well-being of our entire community, current students and alumni alike, are of the utmost importance to Miami Country Day School, and we condemn sexual assault in the strongest terms. Around 2001, a 15-year-old Kropp student went to a gathering with Tall and other friends. She said Tall brought her into a room and raped her. She said she tried to push him off and scream no, but he persisted. She ultimately was led out of the house in a state of undress as Tall threw some of her clothes out after her. She said she eventually got her clothes and walked home a few blocks away. She said she didn't report the incident because she didn't want to bring more attention to it. Another student was told of the account by a person who was present at the time. Oren and Alon were part of a group of high school students who allegedly gang raped a Krop high school freshman in 2003, said the accuser, who was 14 at the time. She said she remembers multiple boys, including Oren and Alon, raping her in what they called running a train, or when multiple men have sex with a woman one after the other. That night, she said family members brought her to a local hospital. She said she doesn't remember what they did at the hospital and that she had taken Xanax, but she didn't have her underwear or purse after leaving the house. She stayed in bed much of the weekend. At Krop on Monday, a group of the boys approached her and handed her her purse. She started crying, and a security guard approached her and a friend, suggesting she go to a guidance counselor. She said she told the guidance counselor what happened, and the counselor called the police, who came to the school. The friend of the woman, who was also a student at Krop, confirmed the account, which she was told at the time. Past and current Krop administrators didn't respond to requests for comment. An operator at the school said most administrators are out until mid-August. North Miami Beach Police Department investigated the incident, interviewing several male students, including Oren and Alon, according to the police report and a spokesperson for the department. According to the report, besides her Xanax consumption, the freshman also was given an unknown alcoholic beverage while at the house. She was later accompanied by a detective to the Jackson Memorial Hospital's Rape Treatment Center and examined by a doctor, according to the report. That report was shared with the detective. They brought their findings to the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Sexual Battery Unit. An assistant state attorney at the time dismissed it due to the inconsistencies of the statements made by the victim, contradicting witnesses, insufficient evidence, and the fact that the defendants admitted to having sexual intercourse with the victim. Oh yeah, like that's not a fucking strategy, saying, oh yeah, no, we had sex, but it was consensual. And then the prosecutors or police will go, oh, well, they said that they had sex and it was consensual. And this seems like a classic case of a girl who drank too much, feels embarrassed. So case closed. The attorney has since died. Rest in piss. The spokesperson for the North Miami Police Department said they had no comment since it was an old case and the lead investigator retired. Another woman said around 15 years ago in New York, Tall tried to force himself on her. She said that she and Tall met at the SL nightclub, went back to his apartment where they initially made out while she was partially undressed. They had smoked marijuana. Oren and another friend were also there, entered the bedroom, and shut the door. Tall became more rough with her. His friend started taking photos, and she began to panic. She said she was eventually allowed to leave and remembers Tall and the others laughing the whole time. It's also that it's like they get off on the humiliation. They get off on knowing that these girls are scared. They think it's funny. They think it's funny that they can just do this evil shit. Their level of fucking gall. I know. She said she went to the hospital soon after to see if she was drugged and tried to report the incident to the New York City police at the time. She was told that because she consented to consuming marijuana, she didn't have a case. This is this century. This is in the 2000s. This woman who was drugged and who was victimized by these men, being told that because she consented to consuming marijuana, there was nothing that she could do. The Journal confirmed the account based on correspondence from the time. At Douglas Elliman, the brothers were favorites of Chairman Howard Lorber. Here's a picture of all of the three of them. They were favorites of Chairman Howard Lorber, who frequently directed business to them or recommended them to developers for high-profile projects. He attended Oren and Alon's 27th birthday party at Boutique Restaurant near Central Park, with Lorber saying in a video that he was proud to be associated with the brothers. In a statement, a spokesman for Douglas Elliman said that no executive at the firm favored the brothers and that it's common for executives to attend social events hosted by agents. The 3 former members of the brothers' team at Douglas Elliman told the Journal that Oren frequently bragged about his sex life. One team member said Oren would show pictures of him and his brothers with naked women that they had been with. The extent to which people at Douglas Elliman were aware of sexual assault allegations against the brothers is unclear. More than a decade ago, Oren warned at least one senior executive at the firm that he might be publicly accused of sexual assault. The former executive said he dismissed the conversation at the time and didn't look into the situation further. Yeah, no big deal. Nor did he inform any other high-level executives or human resources. In the real estate industry, agents are independent contractors, meaning they aren't subject to the same level of scrutiny that's common for employees at other types of companies. In recent weeks, Douglas Elliman sent an email to its staff warning that they shouldn't speak to the media about the Alexander brothers. A lawyer for Oren and Alon attempted for many months to negotiate a settlement with Kate Whiteman, one of the women who's filed suit against them in March, who is now dead. The parties couldn't settle on terms. After news of the lawsuits broke, one woman who alleged that Oren sexually assaulted her in 2017 commented that it was a long time coming on an Instagram post by the real estate trade publication The Real Deal detailing lawsuits against the brothers. Oren reached out directly to the woman, according to messages reviewed by the Journal. Nice comments on Instagram, he texted her, adding that their prior friendly messages in the text chain would reveal the real story. You're pathetic, he wrote to her. Of course, using the incorrect version of your. Just want to point that out. Yeah, that's how this so often works, that these abusers, these rapists will intimidate and harass and be like, good luck having anyone believe you. You're a whore. You're pathetic. I have text messages between us, and everyone will believe that you're just a lying bitch. Okay, not only is it weird to show people those pictures, if the brothers were in it, like, even if it was consensual, wouldn't people be like, why are you having sex with your brother there? Like, the red flags are everywhere. Yeah, okay, here's the thing. All right. This is the culture, the larger culture that we talk about all the time, that lets men like the Alexanders get away with being creeps, let alone, committing severe sexual crimes. It's nobody does anything about it because these guys are rich and very well connected. I wish I could describe what I want to have happen to these fucks. Well, we will see in August when they are sentenced, and they are facing a minimum of 15 years and a maximum of life in prison. The charge of sex trafficking alone carries a life sentence. There's like weird incestuous undertones to this story too. Yeah, it's like how many of these instances of rape involve the brothers like side by side having drugged and raped girls, or taking turns, participating in like a gang rape. It's just, it's sick. It's sick on so many different levels. I wish nothing but total pain and suffering for all 3 of them. Just complete and total sick degeneracy. I think it's more about reveling in the power that they felt over these women together. Yeah, for sure. I think I think they bonded. I think they bonded over sharing in this together. That the three of them all did these things and bragged about it to one another and felt proud about it. And it was something that they all shared in. Obviously, being rich does give them power and protection in this, but I think it's important to know that even if the men are not rich, still often no one does anything about it. It's misogyny. Men get away with this every day, rich or poor. Yes, it is not just rich and powerful men who commit abuse and get away with it. I hate that it was so normal to them that they had an entire system and routine. Yes, and like I said, they had that sick playbook with their rules justifying if a woman is too scared to go to the police, it's not rape. It's not rape if she's under the influence of something. It's not rape if whatever reason they decide. It's not rape. Sorry. It's not rape if she was unable to fight back. It's not rape if she had a crush on one of the brothers first. It's not rape if drugs left her with memory gaps. It's not rape if she can't remember every detail of the night. And I think, too, that that's not just them justifying why they are allowed to do these heinous acts to these women and girls. I think it's also recognizing we won't be found criminally or civilly liable because these are always the excuses that are made for rapists. These are always the things that are used to denigrate victims and to shield abusers. Oh, well, she was in a relationship with him. Oh, she pursued him. Oh, she clearly had a crush on him. Oh, she was drunk. Oh, well, she was, she was somebody who got money for sex. Oh, it's not rape because she didn't report it at the time. Hogan, thank you. I don't know why Heliar is on the screen. Oh, this is a Hollywood Reporter thing. It's like, what does this have to do? Oh, yeah, they had consensual sex once before. And so therefore, consent is always given in every instance. Didn't that actress marry rapists? You know what? It is appropriate that Heliar is on the screen here because she did marry a rapist. Britt Lower's husband, alleged rapist. Smoked marijuana was a reason. Yeah, it's not rape because she willingly smoked marijuana. But he has such a bright future. Hey, we have to think about this young man's future. He's a very, very talented swimmer. We don't want him to not be able to fulfill his very, very bright future. Think about what would happen to his life if he were to face the consequences of his actions. My cousin ran away from home when she was 13. For that, they tried to put the blame on her for being raped by a stranger in McDonald's bathroom. Yeah, I mean, they still call children who are victims of sex trafficking, who are being sexually exploited. They'll say that they are child prostitutes. Like when Jeffrey Epstein was first charged back in 2000 and in the early 2000s, The charge that he pled guilty to was soliciting prostitution from an underage woman. As if like children are consenting to working in sex work. Like they are consenting to having sex, and the problem is that they're underage. Are you talking about the rapist, Brock Turner? The person who's a rapist and shall always be a rapist, Brock Turner? Yeah, that fucking rapist. When Mark Leda interviewed a child prostitute. Yeah. Oh my God. All right. I need to talk about something else. Who goes by a different name now? I mean, here's the thing. Brock Turner, yes, he did not go to prison. He has his freedom, but he changed his name. I think last I saw he was working at some factory in the Midwest somewhere. And when people find out who he is, they do not leave him in peace. Or I guess went to prison for, he did not face the consequences that he should have, because the judge decided that he just had too bright of a future. He gets fired when they find out. Yeah. Yeah, so fuck him for the rest of his life. Came from a good family. Yeah. You know, when you come from a good family, like the Alexanders did, such a good family, well, that by itself should make you immune, because, hey, you're from a good family. You got a lot of opportunities, bright future ahead of you.